You're listening to the Hunt Stealth Podcast with Ryan Uffens, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the wild. Whether you're an aspiring hunter or an adventurer seeking the untamed, together we'll explore the strategies and stories that lead to success in the great outdoors.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hunt Stealth Podcast. We're excited to sit down with Weston Homa today. Weston is a hunter out of Pennsylvania that got an itch to start chasing some big game out west. So every year he comes out here and does that. So Weston, thanks for joining us, man. Why don't you share with the folks a little bit about your background, and let's just kind of start there and dig into it.
Yeah. So, like you said, my name's Weston, and I just absolutely love hunting the West. So I'm from Pennsylvania. So I'm one of those guys from back east that everybody hates out west when they pull in. But I do find myself going every year to the point now where I get out there for at least like 2 different tags every year. And I started back in like 4 years ago going out there. And it just hooked me ever since. And now it's like all I think about, all I love to do. I train for it to the point where I started running a lot and I kept up with it and kept running more. And now I'm pretty big in the endurance, marathon world. So I use that to leverage my hunting out there. And then obviously just being from Pennsylvania, I like to whitetail deer hunt a lot and hunt black bears as well. So that's pretty much what I do even now. Like it's March and I'm still finding myself. I hit the gym in the morning before work. I go to work.
I saw you this morning, 5:30 a.m., which would be 3:30 our time.
Yeah. That's like when I'm getting up. then I'm running after work and then I'm shooting my bow. And then I was doing some like e-scouting a little bit today while I had a little break at work. And it's just all I think about every day.
That's awesome. So tell me, have you always been doing like the ultra marathons, long distance running?
No. And that's why I'm a huge believer in like having the right mindset. And I truly believe anything's possible if you just work your ass off and have a good attitude, because I was not a runner by any means. I played high school baseball and soccer and was just probably an average athlete at best. Through college, I pretty much just lifted weights and drank a lot. I didn't start really running till the last couple years. And just it's like anything, man. If you just keep showing up and you got the right intent, I can't believe that like now this is what I'm doing. And I'm knocking on the door to go to Boston for the marathon. And I ran a 70-mile ultra last year, which qualified me for Western States 100-mile, which is like the Boston of trail races, basically. But yeah, I did that 70-miler and I'm looking to, and I've competed in some other races. Like I won a few local, like bigger races. And then I got my first 100-miler coming up in August this year.
Dang, man. So how long ago did you start doing the ultra marathons?
I'd say my first race was, I remember during COVID, I kept up with the running because, gyms were closed and things. And I signed up for a half marathon, but then COVID canceled everything. So after about a year or so, when races could come back, at that point I had been running a lot and I had already run like 13, 15, 16 miles on my own already. And I was like, screw it, I'm just going to go for the full marathon. So I ran my first race ever was a full marathon. That was in 2022. And I ran it in like 3:30 something. And I was like, oh, wow, I don't really know what I'm doing. And I wonder if I can really make something happen here. And then since then, it's just been more 50Ks and more marathons and things like that. And then I've just been pushing that ultra distance. And yeah.
So did you train for like your first half marathon, or did you kind of just like, you've been running, or did you decide just to go get after it?
I was running, but not really had an intentful training plan. And then like when COVID canceled the half, I just kind of kept doing my thing. And fast forward a year, then I just started, when you get passionate about something, then like you really start questioning things, trying to figure out what more can I do? What are like those guys better than me doing? So then you slowly start looking at it, just like backcountry hunting, dude.
Hmm.
You go into the YouTube rabbit hole, the podcast, maybe you pick up some books, and then you're like, okay, I can figure this out. And look like you get like people got these like fancy running shoes. What's that all about? So you start doing that, and that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. I accidentally ran a half marathon once. I say I say accidentally because we had gone up to our family cabin, and my boy, who, he played comp baseball and I coached, but we had a tournament and we were not too far from the family cabin. We're like, let's just run up there for the weekend after we had a doubleheader on Friday. And so we went up there after the games that night, and we were over. We went to LeBeau's. So anybody that's familiar with Bear Lake knows about LeBeau's. They've got like their shakes and their LeBeau's special burger with pastrami, and you get the onion rings. And anyway, we leave the game, go up there to get dinner, and it was just like crazy busy. Um, and my wife's like, "Why are there so many people up here?" She started asking around. They're like, "Oh, it's the Bear Lake Marathon." And she was like, let's do it. And I didn't run at the time. There was like no training whatsoever. And she's like, let's just go sign up for the half. So we went and did that after I had finished pounding a shake, a massive burger, onion rings, fries. Like I was like the furthest thing from in shape. But yeah, I laughed when you said like I think you were like about 2.5 hours, like your first marathon or something like that, or 2 hour 50 minutes
My
something.
no, my marathon, my first ever marathon was 3 hours and 30 some minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, my first half marathon was like 2 hours and I don't know, probably 50 minutes. But dude, I had never felt like my ID bands hurt so bad. And it's like the second you're like, oh, I'm gonna rest, like I'm gonna slow down for a minute. It's like, no, that's, we had talked a little bit before about like that mental strength, right? And it's easy. Like, I discovered as I'm going and the pain starts to set in. And again, no, like literally no training. Like I had never run more than like a 5K before. And we're up like at elevation. I mean, it was beautiful, like ran around the lake, but man, it hurt. So I look at people that do the marathons and the half marathons and the ultras, and there's a couple guys in my neighborhood that do those, and I don't know, I think I'm too big to do it. Like I'm 6'3", 230, and I'm like, I don't want to run, I don't like running. I put in a lot of miles every day, but I'm not a runner. So I think it's awesome. That's something that you got super into and like went down the rabbit hole. I did start. I'm sure you've heard of Rich Roll, right? Finding Ultra. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Read that
Yes.
book?
Yep.
Yeah, that dude's an inspiration. And
I
and
love his
after I
podcast.
do his podcast is awesome. He's such a cool and interesting cat. But yeah, I thought it for a minute after I did the half marathon. I was like, okay, like I want to see if I can do it, but I don't know, man. For me, I just I'm a large dude. I think I need to trim down if I was going to try and start running a little bit. I don't know. I look at like Truett Haynes and he's like freaking jacked and just like runs his marathons in his jeans, man. It's insane.
He's a big dude, but I've heard him on some podcasts. He's even said like he had to lean down a little bit, but hey, that dude puts in the work, and when you put in the work, you're gonna get the output. That's plain
Yeah.
and simple.
Well, and I follow you on Instagram. I see the work that you're putting in. You're by no means a little guy. I mean, you got some meat on you for sure. Got some strength. Got some power.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not actually. Maybe it's the cutoff shirts at the gym. I'm not. I'm really not a huge dude, and I just try to pack on as much muscle. But I find and I will in the winter, and I find though when I get to a point when I'm pushing like 50, 60 miles a week running, it's really hard to maintain that no matter how much I eat and everything. And I'll track my lifts and I'll notice my strength. I'm not PRing on the bench every week like I might in the winter when I'm really like packing on the weight, not quite running as much. So it's just
Yeah.
a balance. It's all about what you want to do, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. How has that been able to help you with your big game hunting that you're doing?
Totally. So at first, when I first started going out west, I was like, I think I need to get in better shape. I'm like everybody. Like I see people like Cam Haines run a lot and stuff, and I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. You need to be in shape to hike around and run around up there, and that's kind of how it started was for me. That's all my goal was, just to get in a little bit better shape. And like I said, I kept up with it. But what I've really found is, and I'll never say like you have to run that much to be an effective hunter, but I do think you need to do some hard things and try to get yourself to be a little bit more comfortable being uncomfortable. So it doesn't have to be an ultra marathon. It doesn't have to be any of that, but it is something that I like to tap into when it's day 6 and I'm so freaking tired and I've been chasing elk for 8, 10, 12 miles a day with a heavy backpack. And I think a lot of people, they might not come out and say that they quit, but they're not leaving the basin where they know they haven't been seeing any freaking elk. And they're just compromised and say like, well, maybe there's some sign here and we'll just give this another day or two. And it's like, no, dude, your ass needs to be moving and getting to the next basin. And deep down that's what you got to do. And it's just something I like to tap into where I'm just like, shit, dude, I'm tired and I feel like dog shit and I want to quit. But like, I don't know, dude, I ran for 15 hours straight, 70 miles. Like I could probably get my ass up over into that next basin. And then you just take one step at a time and then you do. And then you're like, all right, that wasn't so bad, big pussy.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
those things, like haven't built that confidence a little bit. It's something that you can really use when you're down and out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do. I find myself sometimes like when I'm up in the hills. I mean, so I'm fortunate, I'm in Utah. I live at the base of a mountain and, I now that the snow's starting to melt out here, like I'll start going hitting, really going for some elevation gain. We've got what I call like the zigzag trail that goes up the mountain, and it's about 3.5 miles, like up and down, but it's pretty vertical. Um, and I enjoy doing that. And when you're doing that in the summer, and the thing is where this is at, where I go in the summer, there's no cover, like none, until you get to the top. There's some cover at the top, but going up, like it's just scorched earth, hot. You got rattlesnakes up there, and you have to just learn to push yourself. But that mental talk where it's like sometimes you tell yourself, like, all right, bitch, like you can do this. Like you've done hard things before, right? To your point where you kind of have to learn to push yourself. So let me ask you this. So the first time you came out here, what, I mean, I know that you had clearly started training for it to try and get ready. What was it like feeling that elevation change going from East Coast out here to like actually putting like boots on the mountain?
So I'd say for me, honestly, and I shot a cow elk last year by myself up at 12,000 feet, packed it out. I truthfully don't have a problem with the altitude. I never did. I've always slept good. I will obviously notice when you're way up there, you do just get a little shortness of breath. Like I think that's everybody, but I've
Yeah.
never gotten really sick I backpacked the West
I mean,
when I
it's not
was,
Mount Everest. So yeah,
no,
I mean,
it's not, but I've
you know,
seen guys, dude, that really are screwed up and they
yeah,
don't adjust well. And some might even be in decent shape, but it just hits people in some ways.
yeah,
I think though, the biggest hurdle was just being like, okay, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be to actually find elk, get away from pressure and things like that, because everybody can romanticize hunting the West, the backcountry, backpacking in, and it is special, and I do love it. I think about it every day. I'm passionate about it, but if you're following influencer so-and-so on social media, that's not the experience that you're going to have when you're just a regular guy coming from wherever and you just got that over-the-counter tag. It can still be special if you work your ass off, but it's going to be tough. It's not easy. Yeah.
I can attest to that 100%. It's difficult, and once the season opens up, like everyone out here wants to go get on the mountain and start pushing, and you have to be prepared mentally to push yourself deep and get into areas where other people just don't want to go, in order to have success. And I found those areas, and I'm learning a lot of things that I need to do better that's going to ultimately lead me to success. But yeah, it's crazy the amount of pressure out here. Like the over the counter tag. It's like in Utah, you wanna you wanna buy a archery OTC elk tag, like I mean, it's pretty much open season. Like anyone can go get one, and then the pressure starts. So yeah, you've definitely got to be physically prepared and mentally prepared to deal with the pressure and the people for sure.
Definitely. And you see, like, times are changing. So I know Utah still has that any bull over the counter, but they're really known for that. I mean, you got your spike for non-residents, that spike tag, which sounds pretty neat. I don't know if I got enough points and places to keep me busy for sure, but Colorado's over the counter tag. I mean, I've hunted it multiple times, but that's gone now. And I've had times where, like, yeah, it was tough getting away from people, but I'll tell you right now, like, last year I got in just the 5 days before I tagged out, I didn't see any other elk hunters, man. And I moved 3 times, and I went in deep and high every time. And I got on 3 stalks on herds. And I had an incredible experience. Was I hunting right outside of Denver? No. I think I hear a lot of people on podcasts that, like, they want to just stop all non-resident hunting and all this stuff. And I just feel like some of those guys are like, I live outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I would not hunt the big park for whitetails here right outside the city. Like, I don't do that. And
Right.
I don't know. I just think, and I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way to do it or whatever. I just am a firm believer in there's still a way to have good hunts if you're willing to put in the work, even on a general over-the-counter tag that any blue-collar guy can get.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me, like, what's been your favorite elk hunt that you've been on since you started chasing this big game?
So I'd say elk hunt, that was probably my favorite. I'm not gonna pretend like I've been doing this the past like 30 years. It's only been the last like 4 years I've been going. In the first 2 years, I had multiple chances on some nice bulls, but I didn't really know what I was doing or whatever. But I didn't punch a tag, and it hurt. And then I'm trying to think. I went and did a bear hunt. I heard a really nice bear, came back, and then I drew a mule deer tag, did that, and then I did this elk hunt in 2024. So I mean, this was
And
special. I was
the 2024, that was you started in Idaho, correct? Or is that
Yes. So I can
okay?
kind of
Maybe,
briefly go over that because
yeah.
I'd say this was probably my special story. And I have this all on my YouTube channel. I just started this past fall, and I couldn't believe everything that was happening. So I just kind of kept filming, and it ended up being like a hell of a story. And I've actually been invited on podcasts just to tell it because the videos have starting to like blow up a little bit. It was just so wild. So I could probably really stretch the story out, but at a high level, here's what happened. So,
Well, hey, well, let's say this, like, let's tell the story. I mean, I'm not in a rush. Like, we've got time, so like,
okay,
let's dig into it, and we got plenty of time that we can chat. So, I mean, like I said, I'm in no rush, so
cool,
let's hear it.
cool. All right, so here's what the plan was supposed to be for Weston's 2024 fall. I had picked up a Idaho mule deer tag, and I was going to go hunt mule deer by myself for almost 2 weeks with my bow up in the mountains. And then also it was going to be late October, just over the counter elk, or a rifle tag actually with some guys. So that was going to be my 2024. But what had happened was I'm getting ready to leave for this solo Idaho archery hunt, and I see this wildfire start to pop up like a week or two before I'm going out there. And it was a really small unit in Idaho, and the Idaho deer tag for a non-resident, you're only good for that one unit. Like, wherever that unit is on your tag, that's the only place you can deer hunt. So this fire started getting a little bigger, and I started to get nervous, but I was like, screw it. I'm still going. I made the 33-hour that's drive time. Like, it took me a couple.
When you're deep in the wild, you need fuel that won't quit. ReadyWise Pro Meals delivers over 30 grams of protein and over 500 calories per serving, keeping you strong for the hunt, the chase, and whatever the backcountry throws your way. From the protein-packed breakfast skillet to the bold Thai coconut cashew curry, these lightweight, freeze-dried meals are ready in minutes. Just add water and get back to the adventure. Made in the USA and built for hunters, explorers, and anyone who refuses to slow down. Get yours at ReadyWiseOutdoor.com and use promo code STEALTH for 10% off your next order.
Days to actually make the whole drive. And actually, as I'm driving out there, the fire's getting bigger. And like I said, it's not a big unit. And I try to give myself at least 3 or 4 hunt plans, so to speak, like different parts of the unit, plans A through D at least. And I'm like really e-scouted, really dialed in on each one. Basically, I couldn't go anywhere except for like one of my plans because the whole fire was coming into the unit, and then they had this closure around it because the smoke was so bad. The only thing that was open was a small section of the unit, and that was basically like one of my hunt plans for that was in that little area, but it was not ideal because I knew I was like, I'm going to have to go there and put all my eggs in that basket. And what made it really tough was to get to that little section that was still open. I had to park outside of the unit, hike 6 miles up the mountain, and then I'd get to like the unit border. So then I could start hunting. That was the only access into my unit basically at the time.
Wow.
So I was like, whatever, just do it. But this is what I love to do. I was just like, whatever. Hey, it's going to be a hell of a story. That's what I kept saying. Like, it's going to be a hell of a story. So I got there a couple days early to scout. So what I did was I packed just a few days of food and all my camp gear, and I just left my bow in the truck and, most of the rest of the food and things like that. So I pack up in there for a few days, and I'm glassing up really a lot of does. I didn't see a whole lot of bucks. I was getting a little worried, but got into some basins in the high country, and I was like, okay, maybe I can make something happen. But the day before I was going to pack down for the opener of the season to get my bow and then come back up and hunt, the smoke just rolled in, man, like bad. And I'm up there by myself. I have no cell service. I don't know anything. I'm from Pennsylvania. I don't know anything about wildfires, dude. Like, I don't know how much smoke is too much smoke or anything like that. And then you're by yourself. It's all quiet. Your mind just starts going, and it's like, how much of this smoke is going to, like, is this okay to sleep out in? Like, I don't know I don't know what to think. So you can see in the video on my YouTube, the smoke starts to get so bad that last night I couldn't even glass. I was like, this sucks. I'm just going to go back in my tent and eat dinner, go to bed, but get up and hike back to the truck, grab my bow, and I'll start hunting the next day. So I wake up the next morning. Yeah, smoke's just rolled in, and I'm like, whatever. So I get to that unit border crossing. I was already like 4 or 5 miles into the unit, got to the border crossing up on top of the mountain, and I left. So I was like, well, I'll leave my tent and my camp, like everything here, since I'm just bombing down and coming right back up. So I left it up on the mountain. I get back down to the truck. When I get to the truck, I was at I parked at Trailhead. There was signs all over that said, this is all shut down and closed. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, tomorrow's opening day, and I can't hunt anywhere. They have a map of everything, like, all hashed out. Dude, it's the hunt unit's on there. It's the whole unit, everything closed. And then it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Just go home, basically.
Dude, I filmed it too. I'm sitting there like a bum. I was sitting on a log. I was like bum on a log, like just being like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I've already hiked like 15 miles or whatever to get out. My camp's still on the mountain, and I'm like, shit, I'm not gonna leave my stuff. So I turn around again. It's still all smoky and everything. I make that 6-mile hike back up to my camp. And I know this because in the video I even looked, and I'm like, how far did I go today? It said 21 miles I hiked that day. And I get back up to my camp in all the smoke, and it's like late at night, and I'm like, I'm better off just sleeping up here than hiking another 6 miles to the truck. That's over a marathon in a day with a backpack. I was like, well, I'll take
That's
my chances.
insane.
Yeah, it was nuts, dude. The whole time I'm just like,
That's also insane to be like, I'm going to take my chances up here, because like when those, yeah,
yeah, yeah. But weighing my options, I'm already super dehydrated and exhausted, and it's dark. I'm like, I'm
yeah.
off trail, and like, I just was like, I'm just
You
gonna fall
couldn't
asleep.
you couldn't see flames at that point, but there was smoke.
Yeah, way out, I could see when I was up on this peak, like climbing up over into the basin where I dropped my camp. I could see flames out there, but the
Uh-huh.
smoke, well, the wind switched bad, and then that really brought in the smoke. And I was like, okay, I know that fire isn't going to make its way all the way over here, but yeah, I was like, I just basically hiked almost a marathon in all this smoke, and like, like you can tell you can hear my voice is hoarse, and like I'm just like, I don't know how much this this is good for
Just
you.
gassed out.
Yeah, gassed out. So I fell asleep. I woke up, packed up. So mad. I don't know what I'm going to do. I get down to the truck, and then I drive out of there, and I finally get cell service. Like, I don't know anything. I finally get cell service. I get into town. I call the Forest Service. I call Fish and Game. Basically, Forest Service said, like, what do you want us to do? Like, we got a fire here, buddy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So, like, tough. Fish and Game said, you know, dude, it sucked. They said, so since today was the opening day, the rule is you're not allowed to exchange tags or anything once the season opens. But they said, like, they've been getting calls about this or whatever, and they said, well, this deer tag is good for like the whole year. You can come back in the rifle season. And I was like, I'm from Pennsylvania. Like, this is my hunt. Like, you really can't. I can't switch to a different unit. I can't do anything. They're like, no, the season opened. And once the season opened, we can't exchange or do anything different.
Sounds like the government.
Yeah, yeah. And then so it's funny you say it. So it was Friday, at the end of the day, and like you're trying to get a hold of somebody working for the government. And I said, well, what are you guys going to do? And she said, well, I think we've been sending some emails out, and our supervisor said maybe Tuesday morning we're going to have some meetings on it. And I'm like, that's in 4 days or whatever. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, so whatever. I was so angry. But I think I'd say over the last few years, just becoming more disciplined, trying to just get a better attitude on things. I think working harder, and I guess I'm building my mental toughness a little bit. I try to just keep positive, man. And I'm like, I'm not going home. I love these adventures. I love being out here. I love pushing it, and I keep saying, like, it's going to be a hell of a story, dude. And I'm going to write the story that I want to tell. I'm not going to go back home and everybody's just going to feel sorry for me, and then I feel sorry for myself, and then I'm just like so
Poor Weston.
What's that?
I said poor Weston.
Right. Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what it would have been. And like,
I mean, it really is kind of like a first world problem, right? Like, when you look back at it, but also I think that it shows like, the dedication that you have to it, because I mean, yeah, you make that trek out here, 33 hours of driving or whatever it was, and then you hike up in there, set up camp, you know, getting everything ready to go, and then you're like, we got to get out of here, and then they pivot. But yeah, that's I mean, I understand them wanting to keep everybody safe and protected and get people out of there, but also it's like, well, they don't understand the fact that somebody drove from Pennsylvania, right? Like it means nothing to them.
I get it. And in that
Yeah,
moment, I was upset, but then I was like, quit being a victim. Like,
yeah, yeah. You
control what you can
pivoted.
control. It's not their fault. It's not, you know, let's try to figure something out. So that's what I did. And I told this story on different podcasts, and the guy kind of said the same thing. Like, I was like, I would have went home and I would have been so miserable. And he was kind of just like, oh, dude, like, who cares? And I'm like, well, dude, no, like, I care. Like, this means that much to me. Like, I probably would have been miserable. And I know there's far greater tragedies in the world. Like, that's not
Sure.
what I'm saying. But this is what I live. This is my Super Bowl, dude.
Yeah,
Just,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So let me ask you this: what gave you? So explain to me what happened. Like, what gave you the idea? How did you pivot from, like, you can't hunt to, I mean, we know you ended up going to Colorado. But how did that
Yes.
all come about? Like, to maybe just walk through that, the mindset that you were in, and how you came up with that idea.
Yep. So the story is, prior to this hunt, I was talking to a guy who I just kind of was pinging on Rockslide, like the forums.
Yeah.
He said he was from Pennsylvania, been hunting the West a bunch. We were talking about mule deer. I didn't really know him at all. So I call him, and I knew he was hunting high country mule deer in Colorado with a couple guys. And I was like, dude, you're not going to believe this. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, shouldn't you be hunting? And I was like, this fire rolled in. Like, this sucks. And then I actually asked him, I was like, dude, when are you getting to Colorado? Like, can I just come to your camp? I will glass for you guys. I'll pack meat out. I'll take pictures. Like, I'll be, I just love this, dude. Like, I just was like, that's better than nothing. And maybe I'll learn a thing or two, because he's been hunting the West for a long time. And he was like, oh, dude, of course. He said, we'll be at this trailhead. Sent me a pin tomorrow by like lunchtime. And I was like, see you there. So
How far away was it from where you were?
it was about 8 hours. And I think this was like the night before. So I was like, sweet. I'm getting a hotel, going to regroup, charge up everything, eat a big breakfast, and hit the road. And it they pulled in, and like I pulled in right after them. It was perfect. So
you went from driving 33 hours to hiking up, setting up camp, almost doing 21 miles in hiking in one day. And then you pack out with the smoke coming in, have one
correct.
night to rest up, and then it's like
Yeah.
meet at the trailhead.
I
love that, man.
scouted for a good 3 days or so. That last day is when I did do the 21 miles, but I probably did like 10 to 15 each the other days. Yeah, it was, yeah. So then we regroup, but I'm driving on my way down there, right? And I'm like thinking, all right, these guys are hunting deer. What are the odds this is an over-the-counter elk unit? And in 2024, this was the last year for over-the-counter archery elk tags for non-resident, meaning you could just stop at Walmart and buy the tag. And I'm like, man, what are the odds? So I look in the digest, and it was an over-the-counter elk unit. So I call him back, and I'm like, hey, dude, I said, you guys all have deer tags, right? Like, you're not hunting elk. And they're like, no, we're just deer hunting. And I was like, listen, I don't want to ruin what you guys got going on. I don't want to be in your way. But, like, do you care if I just get an elk tag? Because you know how it is. Like, if you have a deer tag, you see elk. If you have an elk tag, you see deer. But I really didn't want to be a burden. Like, I'm totally inviting myself to this trip. But he was like, dude, don't even worry about it. Get the tag. Like, let's get after it. And I'm like, all right. So literally stopped in Walmart, bought the elk tag. And I was like, holy shit, like, it's back on. Like, now I'm archery elk hunting. Like,
Let's go.
like, what the hell? So I called the YouTube hunt film a wild turn of events, because that's what was going through my mind. Like, what a wild turn of events. So we get to the trailhead, we pack in, and we get up in this basin, and we glass up. So we got there a day before the Colorado archery season started. We glass up these deer. Dude, I climb up into this other basin. Like, we're way back up. We're at 12,000 feet, way back in. Nobody there. We didn't see anybody. And I climb up into this other basin. I glass this herd of elk, put them to bed. And I'm like, this is awesome. So long story short, after that, I hung with those guys for about 2 days. I chased that herd. I blew a stock. It was pretty cool, though. But I then went out solo, because we kind of blew up these two basins, and they were like, we're going to go chase deer on this other mountain. And I had glassed a herd of elk on this whole other face. And I was like, hey, dude, I think I'm just going to go chase those elk. And he's like, all right, we got our in reaches, like, numbers, and we just kept in touch. And they went and deer hunted. And then I went solo and spiked out for 3 more days up at 12,000 feet on this other mountain. And that was tough. I had a day or so with no water. I stalked in on another herd, and that's in the video too, and blew that herd out. But then finally we started hunting on Monday. It was Thursday. I got way into this hellhole of a basin, but I knew there was elk down in there, and spent all day, dude. I got way up high, and I had big sunny day, hot. It was hot. The thermals were rising. I was able to just spend all day creeping down through the timber, finally opened up. And dude, I was in this basin that looked like a Bob Ross painting. There was elk, there was bulls bugling, there was all these cows out in front. I'm by myself. I haven't seen any other hunters. Again, just an over-the-counter tag I just bought at Walmart. And I did take a second. I looked up and I was like, I went from, all-time low.
Total devastation.
Yeah, like this is everything's against me. I'm such a victim. Like, screw the world. To now, I'm like, I'm so grateful for all of this whole experience. And in that moment, so I was making these stalks trying to arrow a bull, and I said the night before, if I get in on this herd, because I glassed them the night before, there was a ton of cows, and the early season too, they're herded up. Nobody's really rutting yet, and like if you really watch, like the cows, they're kind of like on patrol a little bit too, like on the outskirts, and there's just more of them. I was like, if I get on this stalk and I got a cow in bow range, I'm taking it, because this was my first time archery elk hunting, and I just got this wild story, and I'm up here by myself, and I'm like, if I see a good cow, because that's what I was doing, I kept trying to go for these bulls, but these cows were busting me and blowing everybody out. But if I got good wind and I got the opportunity, I'm gonna send one in a cow. And sure enough, this big old cow, she was on the outskirts, and nobody knew I was there. Perfect wind. I drew back. She was at 69 yards, slightly quartering away. Flung an arrow, just 12 ring, man. Absolute 12 ring. She ran up this little rise, and she just rolled right over 20, 30 yards. And I just was like, I can't believe it. Like, looked up, and I was like, this was awesome. And then I spent the next 2 days packing her out by myself, and that was fun too.
Wow.
Yeah.
How far out was the pack out?
So I went and traced it all. I was about 4 miles in. I had a 3,000 or so foot climb, and it was tough too, because I had to go straight up and then cut over, like down into a basin, up another one, and then way down in another one. So that made it more of a challenge. And it just took me a couple trips. Each trip, I timed it, was 7 hours, like from like elk to truck to elk was 7 hours. And
wow.
Yeah, I got it. I mean, it was all right. I did pick up rear quarter by myself. And as soon as I picked it up, I was like, yeah, I got to debone. So deboned everything, got everything in meat bags. At night, it would get into the 30s. Like, my water would freeze a little bit. So I was like,
oh yeah,
it's good.
It gets chilly up there. I mean, you'll get warm during the day, but it definitely, like, once the sun goes down, like, it cools off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I knew that meat would be good through the night, and I was like, during the day, I got this crick here, all shaded pines. Probably doesn't get much above 45. I was like, I'm good. This would be good hanging here for several days. So hung it all up, and no issues, nothing, and got it all out. And I was like, I did it. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's a crazy story. But yeah, you go from having to change states that you're hunting in, and then as luck would have it, like, you reach out to these guys that just so happen to be also hunting OTC elk tag or elk unit, that you're able to buy a over-the-counter tag. And I, I think that says a lot just about, like, the mindset that you have to have, is you have to be willing to pivot and make adjustments, because, and I've said this on multiple podcasts, like, it doesn't matter like what you plan for, like, you'll be throwing a curveball on the mountain, whether it's like getting busted in a stock or having to adjust just like the entire game plan on what you thought you were going to do. But that's crazy and super cool that you're able to get it done. Like, yeah, that is like a crazy turn of events, man.
It was. Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of it, there was a lot of life lessons that, like, I experienced there too. And I think, like, I don't know what came over me, and I just try to take this with me through all aspects of life. Like, you just really have to believe that there is, like, an answer, or, you know what I mean? Like, there is a way, and, like, you have to believe in yourself to keep going. And it sounds all hippy dippy, but what's the alternative? You have to think like that.
I've got a good buddy of mine. His name's Chris Phelps, and that's his thing is he just puts like good out and like good things are going to happen to him, right? And I've watched it time and time and time again, like things just fall his way. And if you have a victim mindset, you will constantly be a victim. If you have a mindset of like, hey, I'm going to be adaptable and I'm going to find a way, you'll adapt and you will find a way. And it does sound a little hokey, like when you say it, but you know, I've started to put it into practice, and like really good things are happening. And you just have to decide that, hey, you're going to be somebody who's willing to take action and adapt. One of the things that, you know, we've talked a little bit about perseverance and just deciding, you know, you're going to do something. Like one of the things I'm working on is like my stoicism. Like I am not a stoic,
I'm all
dude.
about it. Yeah.
I get elevated like quick. My daughter always says, she's like, Dad, you're gonna die in a road rage accident. She's like, you're gonna go after somebody and you're gonna wind up getting shot. And I'm like, well, honey, I'm not gonna be the only like I'm not gonna be without a gun. But there is something that comes with just being like level headed. It brings a calmness not just to you but to everyone that is around you. And as you start to implement that more and more and just say level headed, things that used to, well, I'll speak from personal experience, things that would rattle me before to where I would get like super pissed off super fast. It's like, well, okay, what can I learn from this and how can this make me better? And then how can I find an alternate way to try and accomplish the goal that I set out to accomplish? So,
Yeah. And like stoicism, I've dove down that, and like that has helped me so much. Like it's hard to like, it's easy to say, you know, you have to actually like try to practice it. And I'm not perfect with it, but you know, one of the golden rules or whatever in meditations, Marcus Aurelius is like, closer a man is to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. So if you just tell yourself that, it's like the only way to get through this is like, I have to have a calm mind, and that there's so much truth to it. And then you look at somebody like, you know, Jocko, the Navy SEAL guy, like you think of that, like he's stoic just in his own way. He has that like speech where it's like, every time something bad's going on or like we got this, that, and the other, he says,
good,
good. Yeah, good. So, and it's so
good.
true. It's like Idaho, you know, my Idaho deer unit, a fire rolled in. Good. We can go to Colorado and hunt elk. It's like, oh, I climbed up on this mountain. I don't have water. Good. Like the elk need water. So the elk aren't going to be there. You got to go find water. Like, good. Like it's just constantly, you just have to keep that like, okay. And then you start seeking a new way.
Well, and again, back to the whole like if what you put out into the universe thing, it's like if you're like, hey, like I'm gonna try and be more stoic, I feel like God's like, all right, let's see how serious you are about this.
Yep.
I'm gonna give you plenty of opportunities to see what you can do to be able to keep your calm and cool. I mean, and the things that are happening, they are for the most part like trivial things. Like it's things that it's like that I shouldn't get upset over. But like I was raised like my family, like they were yellers, and like everything got
Yeah.
like blown up like fast. Like so I was just around that. I was around people that lost their cool. Now the family that I married into, like my wife and like my father-in-law, like level-headed, like great examples of like, okay, here's what's happening. What can we do differently? How can we adapt and what can we do to make things work or make things better? So, I mean, I've been married for, it'll be 26 years this summer. So, I mean, I feel like I've come a
Congrats,
long
man.
way, but yeah, thanks. Yeah, but it's still, the more you decide like you're going to try and do something, I feel like the more opportunities are presented to you to vet you out and see what you are really dedicated to doing. Anyway, my 2 cents.
Totally. And that's all you can kind of like ask God for, essentially. Like, he's not going to like give you the skill. He's going to give you the opportunity, and it's on you. So I think it's actually funny that we're saying that. I think the Instagram caption that I wrote, like with my grip and grin of the elk, was like, I think I even wrote in there something so similar. Like, I think, because I said in there, like, I'm so grateful. I thank God, like, for this opportunity. And I think, like, I was in such a low, and I was just asking for, a chance, and it was still up to me to do it. And I think that's his intent all along. Like, he'll give opportunities, but a lot of people will still curse him or whatever, but they just really just didn't capitalize on it.
It reminds me, like, you've probably seen the reel where it's like someone's like, I ask God for patience. Like, does God give you patience, or does he give you opportunities to be patient?
Right.
Like, those types of things. So I think that's a good mindset. And there was, there was a gal I worked with. She was an older lady, and I think she had given me some like good advice and just good perspective. I was talking to her one day. I think she worked in like HR or something like that, but she accidentally hit the mute button. But she's just totally down to earth, and she was just like, look, like what you want, like you can have, but you got to be willing to work for it. And like, if you ask for things, it's not just going to be given, but there's going to be opportunities presented to you that you can either take action on and like move the direction that you want to go, or for you to it's for you just to pass on, right? So it's like we had talked about that you mentioned, like Jocko and like good. Like when things go bad, if you look at them as opportunities for growth, you can grow from them. So
Totally.
yeah,
It's
that's
really
awesome.
interesting too. I remember listening to a podcast of it was an interview with Kobe Bryant before he died. Like, there's a few really good podcasts he did right before like he passed away, but something about this was basically what he was saying. Like, when you start to ask for things, or basically like when you find your craft, like for him was basketball, the world like becomes your oyster with that, because now you're seeking, like you're constantly seeking that. And he says it's crazy that what the world will give back to you when you seek it out. So I'm big on like the visualization and things like that too, but that's just like a small piece of the pie. The biggest piece of the pie is like you need to work your ass off every single day. And
Yeah,
like Kobe would have said that, but there is truth to it. Like what you seek, you're going to find for sure. I mean, that's
yeah,
biblical.
yeah, yeah. If it's wild that so many people don't get that, right? I mean, I think that's part of what we're dealing with in society right now. Like here, I mean, just in the U.S. is you have so many people. There's the entitlement mentality, where it's like I'm like, oh, for example, you could have, when you had started out, and I hope this doesn't come across wrong, but and he'll probably agree with me. Like you started out, you started calling like the wildlife services and those guys, and you're like, I'm from Pennsylvania, right?
Right.
Like, what are you gonna do for me? And that's natural, man. That's okay. But you were open and saying like, okay, well, what can I do? And it wasn't just like, I'm going to go buy an over-the-counter tag in Colorado. You were looking for opportunity just to go out and help somebody else out. So that guy that you had been messaging reached out like, I'll come glass for you. Like, I just want to come and do something. And it worked out that he was heading out. And then it became evident that like, oh man, I may be able to buy a OTC tag for elk, and things just worked out. So when you decide to take action, like that's when things start to fall into place for you. Is
Right. So
like
like my intent,
there's the visualization part, and then there's like without action, like it means nothing.
exactly. Yeah. And I think that's a good point too. Like my intent was, good the whole time. Like I was just going to help. And
Yeah.
then really to then piggyback off this story, like it goes deeper because now, so I come home with all this elk meat and I still have this deer tag. And then I'm like, wait, well, my plan was to hunt over the counter rifle elk in October. but you can't buy 2 over-the-counter elk tags as a non-resident. And I knew that. So when I bought that elk tag to hunt that archery season, that was it then. Flash forward though, fire went away. All these things. I'm sitting at home. I remember I went on my bear hunt. I arrowed a bear. I came back, and I got this email from Fish and Game that said, "Hey, the rifle season is about to start for mule deer. There was a huge fire in this unit over the summer and into September. We'll give you a refund if you want it." And then I was like, I thought about it. I had sleepless nights, like whatever. But then I started like weighing my options and thinking about it more. And my thought was like, okay, if I'm a non-resident and my unit got basically burned to the ground, probably going to take the refund. If I'm a resident, and maybe the resident usually hunts there, well, they can hunt pretty much anywhere. They're residents. They would probably just avoid that unit. So then I was like, this might not be a bad hunt. Like, if I can really find some good areas because not all of it burned down. It was all closed mostly because of the smoke. I was like, I think this might not be bad. So I decided to basically just flip-flop my hunts because I had already had those 2 weeks off from work, like, allocated to hunt Colorado. So I basically just bought that tag earlier, flip-flop my hunts. I didn't really waste any time or money. I guess the 8-hour drive from Idaho to Colorado was like the only additional thing, but flip-flop my hunts.
Minimal in the grand scheme of things.
Very minimal. Yeah. I went back to Idaho by myself, and I hunted late season mule deer up in the mountains. I was solo for 10 days. I got, that all filmed. That video, actually, I started with like no subscribers. Out of nowhere, that video jumped up to like 15,000 views, and I got a ton of comments on it because it was just me getting my butt kicked, hunting my ass off. You'll see me up there solo, just in the snow. I didn't even have like a hot tent, like with a stove. It was just me and my Hilleberg, and got on just a ton of does, man, ton of does and fawns. And I was really pinched down from like areas that were still not really affected, and was able to get away from guys. It was still an awesome time. You'll see in the video though, and then I was feeling pretty good. I got this elk and I got this bear, and I'm like, and I've killed mule deer before. I was like, I think I might like want to try to hold out a little bit. So I passed on this like smaller buck early, and I had 2 really good shooter bucks, man, that I was still hunting through the timber, and that's just a hard way to do it. I was not getting anything coming out in the evenings, like to feed in the basins, but I ended up eating the tag. I knew I worked my butt off, so there's an element of that. As long as like you're tied to that truth that like I gave it everything I got, and I truly think I did, it at least makes me feel okay. I still freaking hate losing and not punching it. Like, it does drive me nuts. And I'm just going to be like, okay, what could I did better? What more can I learn? What more can I do? That way it never happens again. And that's just what I work at every day now. So it just fuels my next one. But it was still a awesome experience.
That's way cool.
Yeah.
Weston, as we kind of like wrap up here, I have a question for you. Like, what is like the one piece of equipment that you won't go into the backwoods without?
Good question. Actually, I will tell you. So I am a huge fan of some sort of very quality puffy jacket. So I see a lot of like the social media influencers saying, you got to buy this, you got to buy this, you got to buy this $1,300 Garmin watch to navigate with. Like, okay. Outside of like a couple things, like a good pack, good pair of boots, the puffy jacket, I wouldn't skimp on. I love so early season hunt where, it is going to be like warm temps, a little cooler at night, but nothing bad. I'll bring a lightweight down puffy. And then those later season hunts, I got that Kafaru Lost Park Parka. It's like a big synthetic puffy jacket. That thing is like an oven. And it's like, dude, if you're cold, like you get in your bag and you're trying to sleep and you're too cold to sleep, you're done. You're screwed. And then glassing, if like you get up to glass, and it's the same thing every time, man. You hike up on the knob and you're like, oh no, it's not too bad. It's not too cold this morning. I'm hot. I'm actually starting to sweat. then you sit down for 5 minutes and you're freezing your butt off, and you're not, and those first couple hours, those last couple hours, your face has to be glued to that spotter. If you're getting up every 5 minutes because you're cold, you might miss your chance. So that good puffy jacket keeps you behind the spotter. So that's my answer. Good puffy jacket. Never not going without one.
Love it. Okay. And maybe you already answered this, but what's the most overrated piece of equipment?
Oh, I kind of laugh when I see like Sitka, and I'm not talking shit on Sitka. There's some pieces that I love, like that ambient active lightweight jacket. I love that thing. But like, I don't think guys, if you have the means for things, ball out. Like, I'm not telling anybody what to do with their money. But if it comes down to like, you may or may not going on the elk tag because you're scratching for the extra few $100, but you think you need the $300 pair of pants to archery hunt. No, like pants are expensive. Pants are kind of overrated. I'll tell you right now, the $20 Wrangler all-terrain pants you can buy from Walmart, best pants to go hiking with, archery hunting with. So I think, yeah, expensive pants are overrated.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Weston, I appreciate your time. I know you've just launched a new podcast, and by the time this thing airs, you'll have another couple episodes out, I believe. What's the name of the podcast, and how can people find it?
Yeah, so appreciate you letting me plug it. And it's called Run the Rack Outdoors Podcast. So Run the Rack is the name of the brand and the platform. I have an online blog. I have a few articles written up. I really enjoy writing, so I'm going to be doing that. But I love podcasting, talking to guys, having conversations like this. And I think this was a good conversation of what I see the platform as, like a good guide to help guys with like the mindset of things a little bit. And I think I can kind of leverage what I'm doing with these big races and stuff and these big backcountry hunts and what I'm learning through that. I think I can really help guys. And then obviously get into the tactics and gear and all these things to just make the most of your next adventure hunt. So that's kind of the little tagline there. Cause I think there's like I think it's like a process like anything. There's always like some bigger influencers in the industry, and I'm not talking crap on them. Like, I'm really not. Like, I think it's so many of them have inspired me so much. But I think it's a little bit easier if like you kind of have a guy like in the middle that's just like, hey, like I'll help guide you, like help you plan your first Western hunt or just getting into hunting in general. But I'm just like a regular dude. Like I'm just from back east, like regular job, like maybe a little bit more relatable. I just love it, dude. I love sharing the story. I love hearing other guys' stories, and I love helping guys out. So Run the Rack Outdoors Podcast. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. That's it.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that we put links to Weston in the show notes, as well as the podcast and the link to the video. So, Weston, is there anything else you just want to leave with the folks before we break here? Yeah,
I'll just say I operate every single day now that I've found these things I'm passionate for. Dude, I just wake up every single day so excited. So I think there is a lot of truth into like, people, you just got to go out and find your passion, man. And and it's not going to be easy. You might go try some things and you're probably going to suck at it, but that's okay. Like, to get good, you have to suck first and then you get good. So just find the thing that excites you, stick with it. And then honestly, dude, like I can't wait to wake up tomorrow to hit the gym, get a run in, shoot my bow, plan my next hunt. And my fall of 2025 is just, I'm so pumped, dude. Call out real quick. So Colorado high country mule deer. I'm hoping I should draw. Like, we're waiting to hear back. Do that first, couple weeks September, and then bounce into Idaho to hunt elk. And then I'll be coming back, and that's all my work PTO. Most September off. Again, regular job. Come back, and then I'm weekend warrior. I just try to scout really hard to hunt my bears and my whitetail. And I got everything filmed from last year, all my hunts and my kills on YouTube. I try to make it like a good story, film, try to set it up nice. And I'm planning on doing this forever, man. So if people want to check that out and follow along, and feel free to reach out with any questions. That's what I'm here for.
Appreciate it, man. I think that's great words of advice. And yeah, definitely when you find something that you're passionate about, it doesn't feel like work. Like, I mean, and I mentioned this, like I'm new to the hunting game and still trying to figure it out. And I'm getting closer, but like I love doing these podcasts and sitting and talking with people like yourself that, you know, that are also new to it, that have had success and are willing to share their insights in that. So yeah, you guys go give him a follow, check out his podcast, and stay safe and God bless.
All right. Thanks, everybody.